You know, we work our way up to Christmas, and we have so much that we're doing, so much to be involved with. And it gets to be a rat race after a while. You know, I have been cut off in traffic. I've been yelled at. I have had the one finger salute thrown up to me. I have thought about doing it myself on a couple of occasions. It's been crazy. Today, I had to, I don't know about the rest of you, but how many of you have to go to Walmart one more time? You know, just before? Yeah. So I made it into Walmart today. And, you know, I'm frazzled, and I'm trying to think, okay, if I got everything done, if I got everything put together, if I got everything I'm supposed to have, am I on time? And I get behind people who are in the garden section who are bringing their groceries through there, you see. I mean, they've got baskets full of milk and hams and all kinds of things. And so I'm saying, okay, you know, we talked 2 weeks ago about patience, right? Remember that? And I said, okay, Lord, yeah. Patience. You know, you're pushing me on this patience thing. And I'm thinking, okay, I've got it. It's Christmas Eve. I'm standing here. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be joyous. And, you know, the first 15 minutes went by, and then we moved one notch. And then the others started, you know, with their stuff. And then when they got everything rung up, they took out a bag of quarters and dimes. A big bag of quarters and dimes. And they dumped it on the counter. A big pile of quarters and dimes. And the first thing they did is start separating the dimes out from the quarters. And you had one pile of quarters, one pile of dimes, and then they started getting the quarters and putting them in fours, you know, all over the counter. And this bill was like $70. And they're putting quarters all over the, and I'm sitting there going, bless you, people. And it took a good 20 minutes for them, because the lady who was running the cash register, she couldn't get it straight. She kept getting them all mixed up, and it was becoming a challenge for me to stand there. And I'm thinking, do I have my collar on? Because if I don't, I'm going to turn loose here, and then I'm going to disappear into the parking lot. This is what Christmas tends to get to be for us. Because you see, I'm convinced that Christmas is Satan's favorite holiday. I'm convinced of that. Because he doesn't mess with Easter much. There's not a whole lot he can do with Easter. I mean, he gets his fingers in it as best he can. But Christmas, oh yeah. Got to buy this. Got to buy that. Oh, somebody bought something for you. You didn't buy anything for them. I got to go over and get it, so I can get them something, so I won't look bad. And you have all of this stuff going on, and you got people everywhere, and you can't find what you want. You know what I'm talking about, right? You all know. And we just get frazzled because Satan has gotten his fingers into Christmas and turned it into something that it was never intended to be. Did you know that the church did not celebrate Christmas for the first 200 years of the church? It didn't start until the 3rd century. And then it was on the first day they celebrated Christmas was May 21st. For several years, they celebrated Christmas in May. And then they switched it to May 26th for some reason. I don't know. Different popes, different ideas. And then many years later, they moved it to January 6th, which is our Epiphany now. And then finally, it was set on December 25th to offset the pagan holiday of Saturnalia. And so now it's locked in stone, December 25th. Most scholars believe that Jesus was actually born in the spring because shepherds do not abide their flocks in the fields in Israel in the dead of winter. You don't do that because it gets cold over there. It snows sometimes in Israel. But I want to tell you something. I was studying a couple of years ago on this. And everything is set around the birth of John the Baptist. It's really how we mark that. And it talks about that when Elizabeth was in her 6th month of pregnancy, that's when the Annunciation, that's when Jesus was announced to Mary. And it says that Mary took off and she went out to see her cousin Elizabeth. And then it switches and it says in the 6th month. And when Mary, and I began to look at that and I began to say, well, wait a minute, are they talking about the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy? Or are they talking about the 6th month of the Jewish calendar, which would be Adar? And if it is Adar, if it was in the 6th month, that's all they say, is in the 6th month. If it was, Adar falls 9 months before December. I don't know. It's not really that important. Because the fact is, he was born. And he was born for us. God became one of us to experience everything we experience. And on that night that we're celebrating tonight, when the shepherds were in the fields, whether they were sitting out there freezing their tush off because they're in the middle of the winter, or whether it was in the spring, it doesn't matter. They were there. And if you noticed in the gospel tonight, I used the King James Version. That's the only time I use the King James Version. I love the King James Version, but it's kind of rough when people are trying to study because the word usage is different. But I love the King James Version of the 2nd chapter of Luke. And it says that the shepherds were abiding their flocks in the field by night, and lo, an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and they were sore afraid. I love that. They were, do you know what that means? Do you know what that means in Elizabethan English? Sore afraid means they were scared out of their mind. Because here's an angel. And to make matters worse, the whole throng appears. This is a spectacular and a magnificent thing because it is worthy of all the choirs of heaven appearing in the skies that night, because something happened that had never happened before and would never happen again. God became man. God showed his love so perfectly to us that he came to be one of us. You've heard me say often before, we have a God who knew everything except one thing. The one thing that God did not know was what it was like to be the creature. He became one of us. And Philippians says he dumped his glory. He poured himself out and became subject to everything that we're subject to. He became subject to aging. He became subject to being injured. He became subject to being thirsty, to being hungry, to itching, to having dust in his eyes. As the Kenyan liturgy says that we use, he walked along our roads and looked at us through human eyes. And yet, in doing that, and in subjecting himself to death, and rising again to overcome every sin, every obstacle that we have, even death, he gave us, if we care to accept it, a joy that can never be lost. It all started with angels being sore afraid. They're the first ones who heard about this. It was a magnificent thing that we celebrate tonight. The magnificence of God's love. How much he loves you. How much he cares for you and for me. If I had been God and seen what happened in the world and saw what happened in the world, I think I might have kicked the thing to pieces and started over somewhere else. But God didn't do that. He entered into it. And it all begins with Christmas night. It all begins with that event that happened after 400 years of silence between the Old Testament and the New Testament. God appears. And he appears in the strangest way. as a baby. It's one of us who has to be nursed by his mother, who has to be taken care of, who has to be taught to walk, who has to grow and give to us the light that shines in the darkness. It was worth being sore afraid about when all of this commenced on that first Christmas night. Yet, Christmas has become something different for many of us. Lots of people celebrate Christmas. They don't even believe the Christmas story, but they like celebrating. It's become a rush. It's become somewhat of a headache to some of us sometimes. But yet, even in the midst of all of this garbage that we wade through and swim through, in the midst of all of that, we still have a moment to think how special this is, how special this time is. Tonight, as we go to our homes, and we're able maybe to sit down and take a breath, I hope you'll remember there's a reason that we still celebrate this after all these years. It's not commanded in the Bible. It's never said celebrate Christmas. It doesn't say that. But we do it because we honor and love the fact that God loved us so much. He came to us and became one of us and knows everything that we experience and yet overcame everything for us and then says, hey, have I got a deal for you? I'll exchange places with you. I'll become your sin. I'll become your fallenness. You become the light and life that goes on eternally. Tonight, as we take a breath and look back at Christmas, don't let us ever forget how spectacular this event was. There are only two events in the history of the world that defy reason, logic, and nature. And that's the birth of God as a baby in the manger and later his resurrection from the dead. They go together. It's all the gift. That's the gift. That's the real gift of Christmas. That's what we celebrate tonight. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Now let us stand.